Guys, I'm not joking. I really sold all my ETH a few months ago. And a few weeks ago, I decided to make this video to explain my reasons why. But right as I was about to make it, we got that surprise ETF approval that came out of nowhere and changed everything. So now I'm wondering if I've made a huge mistake and should buy back my ETH, or should I stick to my plan and stay ETH-less in my portfolio? Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this, but first, you should probably hear out the reasons why I sold my ETH in the first place. Okay, let's start with some context. If you look at this chart, it's the ETH to BTC ratio. Basically, if it's going up, then ETH is performing better than BTC. And if it's going down, then BTC is performing better than ETH. As you can see, this ratio has been on a massive downtrend since late 2022. Coincidentally, that's when ETH had its big upgrade that changed it from proof of work to proof of stake, which really makes you wonder if the critics were right. Anyhow, in terms of pure price action, a lot of respected analysts predicted that 0.05 was a long-term ratio for ETH BTC that would hold strong in 2024. Well, looks like they were dead wrong, as ETH BTC fell below that crucial level and into no man's land earlier this year. So yeah, ETH has clearly been struggling versus BTC for a while now. But it's not only that, ETH has also been struggling versus its main competitor Sol for almost a year now. Just look at this Sol to ETH chart. It's been on a major uptrend since mid-2023. So ETH has not only been underperforming the larger Bitcoin, but has also been getting squeezed from the other end from the smaller Sol. So you can imagine why investors were feeling antsy about holding ETH, because it was getting left in the dust by other projects. Now, the question becomes, why is this happening, right? Well, after doing a bunch of thinking and digging, I came up with a few hypotheses that could explain ETH's struggles. And these are really important to understand because they are the reasons why I decided to sell my beloved ETH. The first reason is the lack of exciting narratives surrounding ETH. In crypto, narratives are king and can be even more important than other fundamental factors in the short to midterm. Unfortunately for ETH, before the surprise ETF approval, it had little to no narratives going on. Remember the ultrasound money narrative that a lot of ETH maxis were spouting? Well, for a while, it looked like a great narrative as ETH was consistently deflationary and had less overall inflation than Bitcoin. But after the Denkun upgrade, that reduced fees across the network and put ETH back into inflationary territory. So that narrative no longer stands. But then on the other hand, other ecosystems had a bunch of exciting stuff going on. Bitcoin had all the NFT excitement with their ordinal stuff. And Solana had the excitement of meme coin season essentially being concentrated to their ecosystem. Meanwhile, in Ethereum land, sure they had some airdrops and DeFi stuff going on like Eigenlayer or Pendle, but it was mostly a snooze fest if we're to be honest. And here's the thing, it's not only the fact that there wasn't anything exciting going on, there was actually negative news surrounding Ethereum. In March, we heard news that the Ethereum Foundation was under investigation by a quote, unnamed state authority. And in April, Consensus got a Wells notice from the SEC over some of their MetaMask features. And then Uniswap, the biggest DEX in all of crypto, received one of those as well. So yeah, it was like Oprah handing out Wells notices to everyone. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially what the SEC sends you if they plan on suing you based on what they consider to be securities violations. So the point is, it really felt like Ethereum was under attack from all sides. But anyhow, the case against ETH goes beyond just narrative and news. There were other fundamental reasons that made me decide to sell my bags. For example, if you've watched my content before, you'll know that I'm big on tokenomics. And unfortunately for Ether, there has been some changes to its supply and demand dynamics lately. Let me explain. So on the supply side, we have ETH no longer being deflationary, right? Ever since the merge happened, ETH was deflationary, which means there was less and less ETH out in circulation as time went on. But after its most recent Denkun upgrade, everything changed. Just look at this chart. In the past month, ETH has been inflationary. And I don't expect that to revert back anytime soon because the upgrade reduced ETH fees significantly, which is great for user experience, right? Well, yes, but it also means a lot more network activity is required in order to get ETH back to a deflationary state. Because remember, how it works is that the network burns part of the transaction fees, but with less transaction fees than before, it gets harder to burn the amount needed to outpace network inflation. So yeah, that was a major change to the supply side of the equation. But meanwhile, the demand side has also changed for the worse, and that's all thanks to layer 2 blockchains. So L2s are a key part of the scaling solution for Ethereum. We all know that by now. But recently, there have been some reasons to doubt just how aligned they are to Ethereum. Many of them have been taking away activity from Ethereum to their chains, which is what they're supposed to do, right? But they also have their own native tokens, and many of them are starting to prioritize those ahead of ETH, which further extracts value away from ETH to their own chains and ecosystems. A longtime critic of L2s, Emin Gün Sayer, who's also the founder of Avalanche, had this to say, quote, "Every L2 is a proto-L1 that is waiting for the right moment to split off and turn into a separate chain." Now, normally, I'd just call him a hater because he's running a competitor to all these chains after all. However, based on the actions of some prominent L2 teams, it really does look like he may be onto something. So the point is, if this future does play out, then it hurts the demand side of ETH, as these L2s that are supposedly Ethereum aligned actually work to pull value away from ETH and into their separate chains. Anyhow, we've got a bunch of reasons to sell our ETH, from news to narrative to supply and demand dynamics, but another major reason stems from something entirely different, and that's investing strategy. You see, there's a popular strategy these days that many people use to construct their portfolios. It's called barbell strategy. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically splitting your portfolio into a super safe and super risky side, while basically ignoring everything in between. So like I said, a lot of people are following that these days, myself included. But what does that have to do with ETH though? Well, the problem is that ETH doesn't necessarily fit neatly into such a barbell strategy. Like Bitcoin is of course on the safe side of the spectrum, as the granddaddy of all cryptocurrencies and the most proven store of value out there. But what else should be on the safe side of a barbell portfolio, if anything? Some people argue that ETH should be, but other people put Sol there instead, as it's also a proven mega cap that's here to stay. And some people only have Bitcoin for their safe side allocation while filling out the high risk, high reward side with meme coins or other shit coins. So yeah, the issue here is that ETH is potentially too mature as a project, so it doesn't move as much as smaller altcoins, yet it's not as quality or gold standard as Bitcoin. And that's why I personally removed ETH from my barbell strategy to only have BTC and of course small cap altcoins on the other side. Anyhow, that's my latest updated thesis surrounding ETH, and I hope it gave you a better understanding of why I would ever do such a thing as sell my precious ETH. But now that the ETF got approved, that changes everything. It could bring a huge wave of demand similar to what happened to Bitcoin after its ETF was approved. And that could minimize some of the concerns I shared earlier. So yeah, I will have to sleep on this, but I'm curious as to what you think about all this. And if you want to learn which coins not to buy as part of the risky side of your portfolio, then watch this video about VC scam coins that you gotta avoid.